Hi. I recently saw someone asking in the comments of a rant for an explanation of lobotomies. And I don't know about you, but I think that's a rather interesting topic. So I've come to try and do the explanation based off my research on the topic. Lobotomy, or leucotomy, was an operation where the nerve pathways connecting to the lobes of the brain were severed from other areas. It was widely used on patients with mental illnesses, many being schizophrenic or struggling with BPD, bipolar personality disorder, to essentially calm them down. Leucotomies were invented in 1935 by Portuguese neurophysician Antonio Egas Moniz. However, Moniz was affected by a metabolic disease called gout. Thus, he was unable to perform the surgery. So what did he do? He just got a surgeon. In the surgery, you drill two holes called burr holes just in front of the coronal structure of the skull, or, I suppose, the forehead. In the earliest versions of this surgery, they'd inject pure ethyl alcohol into the prefrontal cortex, destroying the neural pathways believed to have risen in mentally ill people. This method was scrapped, though, and replaced with the leucotomy method so they could have more control over where the damage in the tissue occurred. I mentioned the leucotome, so here's the little thing. It was inserted into the prefrontal cortex, and then the retractable wire at the end of the tip tore through the white matter fibers connecting the prefrontal lobe to other, deeper parts of the brain. And the operation received mixed results, with some patients improving, some staying the same, and some getting worse. Later on in 1936, American neurologist Walter J. Freeman drastically simplified Moniz's procedure. With Freeman's new procedure came new specialized tools. This one's called the orbiticlast. It's basically a glorified surgical ice pick with a handle. It also was paired alongside a surgical mallet. How Freeman's operation worked was where he'd render the patient unconscious through electroconvulsive shock. He'd then lift their eyelid and angle the orbiticlast above the eyeball and on the sclera. Use the mallet to lightly tap the orbiticlast through to the brain tissue. Once in the brain tissue, the tool would move in different directions, severing the nerve connections that connected the prefrontal cortex from other parts of the brain. This process was then repeated to the other eye. The whole operation took around 10 minutes or less, with the only physically outward evidence that it had happened being two black eyes that disappeared after a couple days. You may be asking what happened to the patients after the procedure? Well, many lobotomized patients were recorded to have some type of personality defect or some shit. This includes emotional bluntness, loss of ambition, and impaired cognitive abilities. Some patients also developed epilepsy, and of course, some died. By some, I mean almost 500 patients died from Freeman's procedure. Lobotomies fell out of popularity in the US around the late 1960s, with the last recorded procedure being in 1967 performed by Freeman on Helen Mortensen, which had sadly resulted in her death. I believe that may be it. So, see ya in the next life.